just was waiting for some people to join in. Uh, for those of you who have joined us today, we are here trying to put across one of our very beloved projects, which of course is just a project under, just for the namesake. It's something that is very vital, that as people who are um, active in the conservation fraternity can relate a lot to, and we understand the importance and vitality of it, which is why we've developed this particular program on the lines of Agenda 21 for Culture. This program was specifically made for INTACH chapters and the members who are part of the whole team, part of the INTACH. But of course, we want to propagate the idea more. We want everyone to take away the good parts of it, because it is the need of the hour. So the program that we are talking about, the program in prospect, is INTACH Cities for Culture. And the title itself is very suggestive in nature, where we are, we are advocating the idea of how cities in itself can be a point where you can propagate culture, and vice versa. We are trying to reclaim our cities with the help of culture. So it's a both-way thing. For those who have joined us today, I'll quickly go through the first part of it so that you have an overview of what the program is all about. Interestingly, today is the concluding session, where we'll be talking about how the governance of any city can be a tool to promote the culture of the city, to retain its identity, with passage of time, with the changes happening all around us. The identity or the culture of the city is getting lost in the process. It's not even changing at a slow pace. It's something that is happening very rapidly. So how can governance come across as an important tool in retaining that? And how can, of course, culture act as a tool in making the governance work efficiently when it comes to development in a particular city? So So as you all know, we've talked about the program INTACH Cities for Culture for quite a while now. What is the program? The program is something that is loosely based on the Agenda 21 for Culture. It's 9 commitments and their action points. There are certain commitments to which we are trying to correlate culture, and vice versa again. And there are certain action points within each of these 9 commitments. These commitments were for those of you who are an integral part of the chapter. They might be the conveners, co-conveners, or members, all equally important in the process. These particular commitments or this particular program was supposed to be a guide which will promote knowledge, facilitate the exchange of good practices that we tend to do as an entity, as the organization that we are, INTACH, and strengthen the chapter network more. There are certain activities that we end up doing as chapters, host these workshops, host these heritage walks, but there should be a context to everything, and there should be, it should be much more sequential in its nature. It should be much more concurrent. It should be much more rooted to the current context of the city that you are in, to the current context of the need that the city is demanding as of now. So yeah, that was the main idea behind it. This was an ambitious program that was supposed that if you at all you tend to adapt with respect to your local chapter or city, it will probably run for over 3 years, where we have certain data that needs to be collected and then analyzed, assessed, and then eventually a lot of things might be an outcome of the data that you've analyzed. So the 9 commitments in prospect are cultural rights and culture, how as the basic human right, culture is something that we have always not really catered to, or not really, even acknowledged. So it's something that we've already discussed: heritage, diversity, and creativity, how heritage can act as a driver or as a tool to promote diversity and creativity of a particular city. culture and education. What is the role between culture and education, and how can they enhance each other, enhance the society in general, culture and environment, culture and economy. We are talking about heritage over here. So of course, a lot of part will be played in terms of heritage economics. What does heritage bring forth with respect to economics? Culture equality and social inclusion, very interesting. We've had a very interesting session on this. Culture, urban planning and public spaces, something that we come across on a day-to-day basis, something very relatable, very tangible in its being, and something everyone can associate with directly. Culture, information, and knowledge, very concurrent with the current times. Something that has been going for a while now, and it's high time where we incorporate it with respect to not only the fraternity of culture propagation and cultures, retention, but also how it can be used in order to retain culture both ways. So all the approaches that we discussed by far have been both ways. Now, the last, but of course not the least and very important part of the whole ecosystem that we are trying to create and devise out of it is the governance part of it. How, whatever we are thinking, whatever we are seeking, and whatever we are trying to get implemented on ground, how governance forms an important part of it, without which nothing is, concrete, nothing is short. So we'll be talking about relationship of governance with respect to culture. Once I am done discussing about the general idea of the concept, we will have Ms. Akriti Bhatnagar. Again, we see a lot of frequently changing participants in our sessions. For those who have joined us today, Bhopal, INTACH Bhopal, as a chapter, was the pilot chapter who took up the project, and they did it very successfully, where they took and gathered data with respect to all these 9 points, 9 commitments, and there were certain suggestions made out of those 9 commitments. We have Ms. Akriti Bhatnagar, who was the person in charge on ground who made the thing happen on ground in Bhopal. So once I'm done orienting you with the whole concept, Akriti will take over and she'll explain how did she go about catering to this particular commitment in Bhopal. So moving forth,
Sukriti,
what does the
for
9?
can you go to the full screen mode? There's a request in the chat.
Sure. Thank you, Pavel. My system might hang. So I thought I was probably okay. Is this fine? Is this fine? Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
All right. Thank you. Yeah. So the governance of culture, the ninth commitment talks about how a multi-actor governance, how a governance that caters to all different realms of society, all different aspects of development are catered to, including the public and private sectors and the civil society. This particular commitment talks about it, how it is important to take account of all the possible things, all the possible sectors when it comes to propagation of culture or either ways, right? It also talks about how different levels we already have vertical, governance, a scheme of vertical governance in place. How to probably make it much more worthwhile, how to make it much more effective. It also talks about encouraging the local governments to take different roles as leaders, financial supporters, facilitators, and observers, where, in the current times, we see the government taking, of course, initiatives out of the whole thing, but there are certain aspects that are left behind while pursuing certain schemes related to culture. It also talks about enabling the local governments, not only, so when we talk about vertical governance, we have a particular hierarchical system in place. It talks about how to not only, of course, the actors in this particular case will be the local governments, who will be very important in devising and making the whole policy, or making whatever scheme that is there, on like making something, making something very applicable in the context. So local government's role is very much defined in that, but of course a lot more power needs to be given with respect to these local governments or the local, because eventually they'll be the ones who will be acting upon those schemes. So they should be given more power. Once they are done doing that, we have always talked about how to make everything very contextual, very much capable in their own smaller ecosystem. So it's very necessary to make these local acting governance agencies someone who has the power, to make it to make certain amendments on ground. Of course, down the line, the whole idea needs to be very similar, but as the area changes, the context of the whole place changes, the identity of the place changes. So whatever things you are planning to apply to a particular area or particular region might not be as applicable in other regions. So in that case, the authority or the power should be in the hands of the local government that is there, right? Uh, how does the program facilitate with respect to this particular commitment? What all things that you as chapters can look into and see what is the role of the agencies that are there with respect to the propagation of culture, right? You can probably look into if at all the local government has a cultural policy in place based on Agenda 21. Of course, Agenda 21 comes into play. Apart from that, also, we have an idea that we don't have any specific cultural policy in place with respect to that, which brings together public, civic, and private initiatives as a joint project. Nothing is segregated, nothing is separate. We need to say a city as a being. Of the past sessions, we've discussed on and off how to understand city as as a living entity. A city is growing, a city is moving forward, and it's not something that you can just put in a box. It needs to be seen in a very holistic, wholesome way. So you need to understand that it's very important to see and to cater to the agents that are public, civic, and private in nature, not as different entities, but as a whole entity that is catering to that particular city. You can also see if at all urban local bodies are promoting cultural planning at micro level from the city, because this particular program is based out on the fact that we have to cater to the cities. Only then we can probably talk about the proposition of sustainable development of the country in whole. We have to start from the micromost level and then probably go forth on the upper level. You can also look into the probability of any public forums that are probably existing at this particular point of time, or the probability of creating of such public forums which aim to steer local cultural policies, if at all there are any, or if at all there aren't, then probably certain agendas that you can, with respect to your city, devise, and it can be pushed forth with the help of these public forums. They can be in the form of local councils on culture that, of course, again include public, civic, private initiatives. Okay. You also need to understand if at all is there any representation of the cities in the boards of these cultural institutes. On and off, we've discussed about how heritage in general or culture in general is an outcome of the interaction between the people and their immediate surroundings. It keeps on, as we are dynamic in our being, the culture or heritage, of course, is dynamic in its being. It's not stationary, it's something very dynamic, right? It cannot be frozen. So it's very essential for a city to grow holistically, to grow in a comprehensive, better way, to have that representation of the citizens who are probably the creators of that culture and the bearers of that culture. And it's important that citizens are present in such important bodies in terms of public, civic, or private initiatives that there are with respect to any city. One can also look into the existing local government policies. They might not go under the category of cultural policies per se, but there might be certain facilities, certain facilitations that could have been devised by certain government agencies locally, certain programs that probably operate to support the participation of citizens in the management of cultural. So the prospect here is culture. The most important thing in itself is culture and the propagation of culture, and city is probably the career of it. And we as people will be the facilitators, the cultural institutes will be the facilitators. So you need to see if the local government or the local government agencies are catering to this idea and this notion. Um, is there any development of specific or appropriate management practices which are transparent, accountable, and evaluate the public services? Something I can probably think at the top of my head is, we've seen this example of smart cities happening all across, all around us. There are certain cities where public's opinion have been taken into consideration. There can be certain councils that have been created in certain cities where people are nominated, and they are an active voice of the people. They are representing the people. They are representing the citizens of the city. Apart from that, I think Dehradun as a city had this smart city app where one could poll in. Uh, Poll in with respect to certain decisions which the management or the authorities were taking, and there were certain polls that were carried out. So such examples can probably be utilized and serve as good practice. I'll not say them as best practice methods, but yeah, of course, something that can be worked on and that can probably be utilized. So uh, certain things can be done, and these can be some of the ways. Also, we can look into the identification of frameworks that assign responsibilities and foster collaboration of cultural policies between the hierarchical, setup, the vertical setup that we were talking about the national, regional, and local governments. Is there any particular legit framework that is there to cater to the entity here is culture. So there are certain schemes, of course, a lot of them on the national level, which are very, which are very prevalent in propagating the idea of culture with respect to cities. There are a lot of them are city based. Swadesh Darshan was one such scheme. You can probably, I don't have the time and the liberty to go beyond and get into the details of it. But yeah, a lot of them do cater to the idea that we are trying to propagate. Uh, I'll stop sharing now and I'll request Akriti to take it over from here.
Yeah.
And she will explain the on-ground thing that we did with respect to the city of Bhopal, which was the pilot of this particular program. Hi,
You
Akriti.
have to, yeah, sorry. You just have to give me permission to share my screen.
I have.
You have?
Just a second. Yeah, I have. Please see.
You're given? Okay. Okay. I hope it's visible, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so good evening, everyone. And today is our last session. So I hope you guys have had an amazing or interesting time getting to know more about Culture 21 and what we did in Bhopal. I mean, I was very thrilled to share my experiences with all of you, and this is the last one, so just I'll just go through it. And the introduction part is definitely Sukriti has very well explained that what this commitment mainly talks about, and this is actually the commitment number 9, as well as this is like a concluding commitment for all the other commitments. So whatever things, whatever aspects or parameters that we have talked about in our previous commitments, this kind of sums up the whole thing and brings forth that what should be the tangible ways in which we can actually look into how governance of culture can be implemented or how we can understand the way, or how we can go about this whole process of bringing culture into the center and developing a framework, policy framework, or certain programs or certain platforms that can actually help in integrating the whole idea of development along with culture, and taking culture as the driving factor for the development henceforth. So starting with action point number one. So sorry, yeah, action point number one talks about implementation by local government of a cultural policy based on the Agenda 21 for Culture and Culture 21. Certainly, in the current framework, we do not have any cultural policy, but this document and this exercise, this whole exercise uh, helped us understand that how important cultural policy is for any city or any state, and how important the role of that cultural policy would be in taking. So there are a lot of things that we talk about, that this should be done, that should be done, but until unless we have a guiding document or some framework that actually governs it, it's very difficult to actually see things happening on ground, or see some concrete changes with respect to this whole idea of culture as the one of the key pillars of sustainable development for the city. So cultural policy is not in place. One of the suggestions that came from this was that we need a cultural policy. Then second is promotion of cultural planning at neighborhood or district level. So cultural planning as such, you do not see cultural planning as cultural planning mentioned somewhere or being acted, or anyone acting upon it. So what we tried to look into was how at neighborhood level or at district level, the planning or the development processes correspond to at least understanding of heritage precincts, and some guidelines or some acts or some legal framework that governs this whole thing. So the developmental guidelines are provided for the same. So for example, BVN, which is Bhumi Vikas Niyam 2012, they briefly mention development rules around heritage structures, which are notified by ASI or state archaeology. The rules of Amasra also, I mean, for the ones who do not know Amasra, that's one of the acts, one of the key acts for development governing, or basically governing development around heritage sites, notified heritage sites, either with ASI or with state archaeology. But this is very heritage specific, because we are talking about culture and cultural planning. So this ambit has to, this ambit has to increase or widen at a multifold level. We just cannot talk about only tangible heritage. There are other factors, there are other cultural factors that need to be integrated into it. And for that, sadly, we did not find any such document or any such guideline which talks about cultural planning at neighborhood or at district level. So we have this this reference point from Bhumi Vikas Niyam 2012, which is for the architectural control guidelines around notified heritage precincts. Then the third one is encouraging dynamic public projects which generate permanent forums for consultation, negotiation, and regulation of goals and methods. So we do not directly, again, this I have faced, and all of you would have realized when we were going through this entire radar report, that there is nothing that directly links to these action points. So we actually had to find a way, any component or any specific parameter that could actually link to this any particular action point. So for this one, we have a Public Service Management Department and AIGGPA, which was the organization which housed this project, and INTACH Bhopal chapter was for time being was housed here. So these are some of the agencies, and MP State Public Services Agency. So these are government organizations or autonomous organizations that mainly look after quality research and analysis of policy and developmental issues. advising the government for improvement in the service delivery to the citizens, forging partnerships with the civil society, private sector, and academia. So, for example, for this one example that we were working on was that AIGGPA internally funded one of the projects which was drafting a heritage policy for the state of MP. And for the same, Urban Heritage Committee was also formed. So since an institution like this, the primary aim is to create platforms or create self-funded, internally funded or externally funded projects where, where there can be forums for discussions regarding certain aspects. So for this one particular, we constituted one urban heritage committee, and principal secretaries from primary major stakeholder departments like culture department was there, tourism department principal secretary was there, urban administration department principal secretary was there. So there were some 4-5 principal secretaries from stakeholder departments, and they were the primary members, and that committee was constituted under the chairmanship of Director General AIGGPA, and that actually was an interesting forum. Now I'm not a part of it anymore, so I'm not sure how further that they have taken it, but certainly this is one of the examples, and there can be other similar examples where this kind of an effort or initiative could really help in realizing this particular commitment. Then the fourth action point is ensuring that cultural institutions which receive public support are transparent, accountable, and evaluate the public services they provide. So cultural institutions, certainly they receive a lot of state grants, and now since they are government organizations, and they are subjected to regular audit and scrutiny, both internally and externally. So there still is, we have a long way to go to make it more transparent, but at least there's a system in place which ensures that the funds that are provided are utilized for a particular cause, or for the reason, for the purpose that they are actually granted for. And then there are state government bodies, and the audit is conducted by Comptroller Auditor General as per the government norms. So in the event of any malpractice, such organizations can be penalized or taken over for better management. This is a system in place. I'm not sure how much effectively or efficiently this works. This is something which is another hour of debate altogether, so I'm not getting into that territory as of now. Then action point number 5, ensuring that programs and institutions in receipt of public support develop and practice gender equality. So now for this particular commitment, gender equality, as of now, whatever we could see in the government policies or any guidelines, is talking about Mahila Niti or women policy, and this was made by Women and Child Development Department in 2015, and most of the departments of MP government follow this policy. So for example, Culture Department has women policy for all the organizations under its umbrella. So when we say Culture Department has policy for all the organizations, that means that there are various sub departments, or we do not call them sub departments, but there are various institutions within Culture Department. So all of them, it's mandatory for all of them to actually incorporate this policy. And so this policy mainly ensures that there is equal participation of women in all the activities, then appointment of female employees in the organization, formation of committees to ensure no women employee is harassed at the workplace, and the state has 33% reservation for women in government institutions, and gender budget also addresses this similar need. So this is the only way in which we could find some effort towards gender equality within these institutions. Then These are some of the points, reference points from Mahila Niti. Then the next one is introducing policies or programs to support participation of citizens in the management of cultural institutions, programs, and events. So as of now, again, I'm saying the same thing, and I don't know how many times I've repeated this, that we do not have a direct policy, which ensures that there is that ensures a support that supports participation of citizens in the management of cultural institutions, programs, and events. But certainly there are various programs, and then there are various cultural organizations, which are either societies or trusts or boards, and they ensure adequate representation of professionals within this area. A lot of work needs to be done for this particular action point. Recognizing and supporting management practices that are representative of local culture. So for this one, certainly because because Bhopal is very vibrant culturally, so there's a recognition of local culture, local cultural practices. And from time to time, because culture is something which is driven by people, and after a point of time, it's very difficult to actually curb people's voice. That's the power of democracy. So certainly there are a lot of festivals and fairs and all of these things keep happening around. And for each one of them, depending upon the number of participants, or depending upon the footfall for that particular festival or particular cultural event, there are a lot of so government ensures, or specific departments, whoever, like if culture department is holding it, so they ensure that they have some management practices in place. But again, this is not something which is like a guideline, or there is some framework for it that addresses it universally. And this is something which is taken care of as and when required, or need basis thing. So important facilities are arranged by the local body from time to time, which helps in maintaining the state culture and public interest. That's what we have understood. But again, as you can see, the score for this is 0, because there is no holistic framework addressing this particular action point. Then establishing an independent civil society platform that includes citizens and cultural professionals from all sectors. So yeah, and now this is one thing which I feel from going through all the action points, that there is a need to actually come up with these kind of platforms where you have people, where you have citizens and cultural professionals coming together. Because otherwise, if these platforms are not there, there cannot be an exchange of knowledge, exchange of information, exchange of ideas. And such independent civil society platforms are really important, and culture policy or any policy framework needs to address this particular aspect, that how important these platforms are. And this is the case with most of the commitments, that for each and every commitment that we have talked about now. So for example, if there's a commitment that talks about culture and environment, so there needs to be a civil society platform that can address that can bring together people from different sectors and citizens on the same platform, and then there can be a fruitful exchange of ideas, which is leading towards some output, some cause, some goal. So in this case, there are various citizen forums, and Rotary Club is there, which is there in most of the cities. Lions Club is there. Hamara Bhopal, INTACH Bhopal chapter is also there, and which is the case with most of the cities, that they have INTACH chapters there. And it becomes necessary that these forums, or these clubs, or these institutions, they ensure that there is a citizen participation. They ensure that they have people from cultural professionals coming together, and and come up with some some concrete, fruitful ideas and some concrete, fruitful discussions over this particular culture as the pivotal thing that we have been talking about since past 9 months. Now, the next one is action point number 9, which is taking measures to strengthen NGOs, trade associations, unions, and other civil society organizations that contribute to cultural life. So from our count and from what we could gather a list of almost 145 NGOs within the city. There are more, but from that we have kind of segregated the ones that seem to be useful or that seem to be important for cultural aspects. So there are 125 NGOs that are directly working in areas related to culture. And if there is any new organization, they're definitely free to get themselves registered and they can look for grants. But again, the thing is there that these NGOs are there and each NGO is working with its own mission and vision statement. And there is no framework that is actually addressing to strengthen the existing NGOs and trade associations and other civil society organizations that are contributing towards cultural life. So that strengthening part is certainly missing. The whole idea is that whatever is existing, we need to strengthen it to actually contribute to the cultural life in a much more concrete and in a much more fruitful way. So until unless that's there, these NGOs might keep working in their own silos. So there's a need to bring them together, or at least have some common mission for at least these NGOs that are working towards the cultural, or that are working towards in the fields or areas related to culture. So score is, that's why again 5 for this. 5 is only for the fact that we have these many NGOs which are actually related or which are directly or indirectly working towards the fields that are related to culture. Then the last one is that development of frameworks to assign responsibilities and foster collaboration for cultural policies between local, regional, and national government. So I'm again saying the same thing, that there needs to be a framework for it, and we certainly recognize the importance of it. And this is a point, or this is something which can become a part of cultural policy, but in the absence of cultural policy, it is difficult to assess its utility or assess that how much work has been done for it at the ground level. So once there is a policy, a lot of action points, it would become easier for us to actually say that how much each and every action point, how much work has been done, given that there is some holistic framework which is directly addressing culture and cultural life of the city. So I think with this, we are done with all the action points of this commitment and all the other commitments. And I hope I could be of some help in making this radar report, or one of the components of this whole process, much or bit useful for all of you to take it further for your specific chapters. And yeah, so I'm done with it. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you, Akriti. Thank you so much for repeating a lot of things for the 1,000th time that we've been doing.
It's very repetitive. It becomes very repetitive after a point of time, because I always feel that cultural policy was one of the biggest takeaway
from the whole thing. And it's the need of the hour. It's something that needs to be implemented right away. Yeah, right away. And maybe of course not right away, but
I mean, whenever, but we certainly recognize that how important it is that we have some culture policy as a framework or a guiding tool to take all these things forward from where they are right now.
All right. Thank you so much, Akriti. Okay. I think I'll probably just say 2-3 things more, and for majorly the people who have joined us today for the first time, or maybe for the second or third time, uh, a lot of might have gone, bonkers. A lot of might not have made much of a sense, because it's not supposed to make sense in just one sitting. It was supposed to be a series of sessions where we were trying to, the idea behind the whole project and the idea behind the whole concept is, uh, we are seeing a lot of changes happening all around us, with respect to development factors that are coming in, with respect to a lot of other things also. And in order to be able to have that development all round, culture is something that can probably act as a tool, something that we all can relate to, that has been there with us since long, that is something that will last for a very long time. It's something that can probably be made use of. And with this specific program, we are probably trying to portray that, that is cities, intact cities for culture. um, there are many things that have come of late: sustainable development, sustainability, all these concepts, all these ideas. As a civilization that has been there for a many years, we know the concept is not new to us. The concept is very much seeped within us, and cities have been the tangible outcome of the culture that is there, and the tangible outcome of the sustainability practices or the sustainable development that we talk about. So why not take it back, take a hold on things? And that is what we're trying to propagate with this idea of this program of INTACH Cities for Culture. And within this particular within this particular program, there were certain, there are certain things that you need to do once you are in a program. There is this extensive radar report that is an outcome of the whole study, where we are trying to understand how, if we are talking about the development of the city, there are certain sections which can probably um, aid and contribute, which anyway, aid and contribute in the development of the city. So they can be, with respect to the 9 points that there are, of course, they are very holistic in nature, they are very wholesome. And we are trying to analyze the specifics and the whereabouts of these commitments in the city in the current context. And that is what the radar report does. Once you are done doing that, you will have a gauge and an idea on how your city is performing with respect to the development that it is being subjected to. There can be innumerable areas where your city might be performing very well, but there can be certain areas where your city might be lagging. And the whole idea is just to understand that lag. Once you understand and analyze that lag, you can probably, as entities, you yourself are, of course, most of the people who have joined us today are people who might be involved in the conservation, thing. They, I think our chairman calls each and every one of us as heritage guardians. So yeah, a lot of us might relate to that set of idea. And you might be in the position to carry this particular thing forward in its truest form, which is the program. If you are a chapter convener, co-convener, or a member, even if you're not, if you have joined us today in your individual capacity, the idea, if at all we are probably, we are able to convey that, you can henceforth apply it someplace else. But the idea remains the same. The idea is that. And this was our whole intent behind doing this series, which was supposed to be open for all, for everyone. And please feel free to get back to us if at all, if you have joined us in your personal capacity. Please get back to us if you are intrigued about this idea. Of course, it is not possible for us to share and talk about all the 9 commitments in just one sitting in this 1 hour long session. We've been doing it for the past 9 months, as Akriti, I think, might have mentioned. So yeah, please talk to us and try to see if at all you can implement and utilize this opportunity to take forward this thing. For the chapters who joined us today or in the past, I think we'll talk to Captain Shukla and see where we can talk about the applicability part of it, and where we can, how do you go about, all this was very idea based, very much project based. How do you go about making that project happen? What are the implications of it, and what are the applications? How can you make that happen on ground, and what is the total methodology of the program? So we'll probably do a separate session for that, maybe some sessions for that, to be able to facilitate you if at all you're interested in adapting this particular program. And yeah, that's all from our end. Parul, would you like to? We have Dr. Parul Gunjal over here with us today too. Parul has been consistently sitting and trying to help us propagate this and push forth it even more. Any concluding remarks relevant to
I
that?
would, yeah, thanks, Sukriti. And, it's great that we have covered all these 9 points and this whole idea of the INTACH Cities for Culture program through these months. And I would just like to mention that I'm sure the all already, and there is a little 1-2 pager mention of the Cities for Culture program, INTACH Cities for Culture program, in that as well. So please, you're welcome to, of course, go through that, and any queries and any questions it sparks, and interest that it sparks from your end, we'd be happy to facilitate taking this idea forward. And look at, basically the idea is we look at culture at the city level, we look at the local level, and we see what are we really doing at the city or the town level with respect to culture, and how we are integrating that in our decision making for the city. So I'm sure each of you is contributing in some way or the other, with your we are thankful for your interest and for your joining in today. And of course, you that demonstrates that there is some, you intend to be connected with the idea of heritage and culture, and intend to do something about it as well. So if this frameworks helps, then it'll be great if we can take it forward, and we'd be happy to facilitate taking this forward. The idea is essentially to embed, because we have when we talk about the 74th amendment also, and the idea of decentralization and constitutional amendment and decentralization, the idea is to bring these decision making to the local level. And culture cannot be sort of ignored. That's the idea that we're trying to communicate, that culture cannot be ignored when we're talking about decision making with respect to a city. And there's so much that can be done at the local level, so it'll be great if we can make use of the opportunities that this framework provides, or otherwise, the kinds of, it's basically a checklist. It sort of tells you that, these are things you can do. And if we can take forward some of these ideas, if we can develop some of these ideas, that'll be a good step forward. So again, I would like to mention that, it's great to see you all present here today, and as individual participants, or as members, or as chapter conveners, each of you can certainly make a difference. And it'll be great if we can think of creative ways of doing that. So bringing culture into the center of the decision making, of the discussion, around development, when we're talking about cities, when we're talking about towns. So that basically is what we would like to end with as a message, and hopefully take forward with you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Parul. Anything, if anyone would like to add on, the forum is open. We have, I think, 5-10 minutes more. So how the chapters can implement the concept. Hi Lalit ji, how are you? The concept of city and culture, you are requested to serve few guidelines. Yes, that is what I mentioned. We will be taking it separately, and it will be specifically for the chapters, unlike these sessions which were meant for everyone. You can write to, Captain Shukla. And of course, we can take it separately also. I'll get back to you regarding this, and we can take it in an individual meeting, or maybe we can do a collective session for all the chapters who are probably interested in taking up this program and localizing it. So yeah, that's that. I've also dropped in my email in the chat box if at all you're interested, for all the individual participants also. If at all you get intrigued by what all this is and want to know more about it, please feel free to drop an email, and we'll be happy to get back to you. So yeah, good good sessions for, and good interaction for these past 9 months. Hope to see you all making it happen, even if not the program in its entirety. Just like Parul said, anything that you can resonate with as an individual or as a community or a city, all these commitments with respect to, even if you want to do something with respect to education and culture, or maybe economics and culture, you see the possibility of it happening. The program provides you with the framework, just certain checkpoints that can be of your help. So yeah, that's that. I think we'll probably now take your leave. Thank you so much again for joining us today, and we hope to see you soon. Bye. Have a nice day. Bye.